During the Stars Made in Canada series, which looks at this country's booming international surrogacy industry, the Crabs and their Canadian surrogate, Paula Capa, a teacher in Kitchener, struggled to become parents. "Obviously we've been waiting forever for this," David says. "And now we've got one beautiful little angel sent from heaven." Caryn and David spent 6 years trying to conceive. Caryn underwent 14 rounds of IVF in Australia before the couple turned to Canada's surrogate market in 2015. Initially, the Crabs were using their own embryos, but in the spring of 2016 they ran out and needed to secure new embryos. Caryn, unable to dislodge the smile from her face while she rocks Tristan, remarks that it's taken an army to get them to this point. Of that there is no doubt. Hundreds of people lent support to the Crabs, and they needed every well-wish they could find. They came so close to not achieving their dream. In December 2016, days before Christmas, Caryn and David received shattering results. Their fourth transfer in 8 months with Paula failed and they were out of embryos. "We don't have good news," wrote Caryn in an email to Star reporters at the time. "We are devastated and heartbroken. No next steps yet." Caryn and David retreated into themselves. Caryn asked friends and family to stop talking about the surrogacy. David tried to reconcile his feelings while working away from home for long stretches. After a few weeks they went away together on a camping trip trying to see if there was any fight left. "I said to my husband, I don't think I can do this anymore, it's too much for me," says Caryn. "He had the strength to go, I'm going to pick you up and take you through and we can do this," she says. However, Caryn and David couldn't afford the $10,000 needed for the new embryos and to cover the cost of another transfer. So Caryn decided to ask the online surrogacy community for advice. She got a message from a couple who didn't have any wisdom to offer, but did have 2 embryos left from their successful surrogacy that they wanted to donate to Caryn and David. "I couldn't believe someone had reached out to us. I called David bawling and then he was bawling," says Caryn. "That moment is just indescribable. Then began the most anguishing part of the journey. The clinic the donor embryos were at was not the same clinic Caryn, David and Paula were using. It took 6 months of fighting and paperwork to get the donor embryos released to Caryn and David. At one point Caryn was in contact with the clinic nearly every day asking when the embryos would be released. The donor couple, too, were required to fulfill exhaustive requirements, including a psychological evaluation, before the clinic would authorize the transfer. "It was hell," says David, of the agonizing wait, and each day brought a new fear that either the donors or Paula would back out. "That's the part that gets me really emotional," says David. Paula said, "I'm with you guys to the end. Who does that? If everyone in the world was like that, the world would be a much better place." Finally the embryos were released and the transfer to Paula was booked. In July 2017, 5 days after the 5th transfer, Caryn and David were babysitting their nephew when Paula sent a text that simply said, "Caryn," and a picture of a pregnancy test with the letters BFP, big fat positive. "I burst into tears and said, 'We're having a baby,'" says Caryn. "We were in such disbelief." The Crabs filmed their friends and family members as they broke the news. Final video is a montage of tears, shouts of joy and heartwarming disbelief. At 2 months old, Tristan is completely unaware of the extraordinary circumstances of his birth and the no less than Herculean effort it took to get him into the world. Nor is he aware that he may be one of the surrogate babies who pushes Canada to rethink the way it approaches reproductive regulation. Canada's 2004 Assisted Human Reproduction Act allows reimbursement for expenses incurred by sperm and egg donors and surrogates during the course of either their donation or pregnancy, but doesn't allow financial payment or in-kind benefits. The potential punishment for breaking these rules is as severe a murder sentence, up to 10 years in prison and $500,000 in fines. Quebec Liberal MP Anthony Housefather plans to table a bill May 29 that will attempt to decriminalize payment to surrogates, egg and sperm donors. It's a move intended to bring Canada in line with the policies in the U.S., where surrogates can make between $20,000 to $40,000 per pregnancy and egg donors can be compensated in excess of $10,000 per donation. Caryn and David are interested in the potential changes because they believe it will bring more awareness to the industry and that it is a fairer arrangement for surrogates. Some hope allowing compensation of surrogates will encourage more women to participate. In Canada, it can take up 2 years to match with a surrogate. For the crabs, it was their best option. Surrogates in Australia are like unicorns, says Caryn, and adoption takes a minimum of 7 years. For now, though, the crabs are relieved to be moving on from the surrogacy world and taking Tristan home. It still doesn't feel real, says Caryn, of the arrival of the baby she has wanted for so long, before the family's long trip back to Australia a month after Tristan's birth. I know that sounds funny, but I still have this fear that someone is going to take him away from me. I think it's going to be nice to be home and to go, this is happening. This is our baby that we get to keep forever. For Paula, it's the end of a chapter and, despite spending the 2 years in nearly daily contact with Caryn and David, she insists she isn't holding them to any sort of relationship in the future. There shouldn't be any expectations of what comes after, says Paula. No one should be doing this as a surrogate to get a family for yourself. You're doing this so someone else can have a family. Caryn and David are less convinced about everyone walking away into the sunset. Tristan has a Canadian brother they met before leaving and who they want him to know, and Paula has a unique place in all their lives. We've known each other for 2 years now. It's more than just a surrogate. Paula is our family, says Caryn. That connection is more than her doing what she's done. Her honesty and the constant support and just wanting to get back up and do it again holds dear to our hearts.